Hello, fellow members of the Alliance, and welcome to episode 15 of the Alliance Football Podcast. I'm your host, Rod Villagomez. Find me on Twitter at RJ Villagomez. Find the show on Twitter at Alliance FB Pod. We are going to do our typical Monday wrap-ups, and we have got a great week to wrap up for you. A couple of upsets and a whole lot of close, entertaining games. So let's get right down to the breakdown. Boy, did we ever get treated to a first game of the week. This one got flexed out of primetime, but I almost feel like it should have stayed in primetime. It was such a great game. It was the San Diego Fleet taking on the Memphis Express, and holy Express, Batman, they have their first win. They are winless no longer. They take this game 26-23 over the Fleet, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that Philip Nelson went out in the second quarter with an injury. Not to say that the Express did not play a great game, because they absolutely did play a great game. But this one, of course, was a lot to do with injury and the fact that Philip Nelson went out. But the Memphis Express pick up their first win on the strength of their defense. And we're going to talk about the three things that we need to take away from this game. And number one to me is that Mettenberger is legit. I mean, listen, not to say that he is the heir apparent and the next NFL MVP, but the fact that he was able to come in and able to help this team win when, Hackenberg had not been able to. And we sort of called it at the end of the last game that the Express had played with Mettenberger coming in and really looking great in the outset. But now that he was able to start a game, and his first start since college, picked up his first win since college, and what an amazing, he didn't have a super stellar afternoon. It wasn't like he lit up the board. He was 18 of 25, 174 yards and one touchdown, but it was good enough to rally his team to a win. And again, this offense looks more put together with Mettenberger out there, and the fact that it was a slow start for Mettenberger too. It almost looked like he may not get the same type of production that he did at the end of last week. But the simple fact of the matter is that he kept his cool, he kept collected, and he was frustrated. You could tell he was just as frustrated as Christian Hackenberg ever was. But here's what I noticed. And exactly what I noticed, the complete opposite of what Hackenberg did, is that Mettenberger, while getting frustrated, sure, but he talked to his guys on the sideline. You saw him slapping some chests. You saw him actually talking through the problem and addressing the issue, rather than crying to his offensive coordinator, crying to everybody that would listen about how everybody's not doing what they're supposed to do. There may have been a little bit of frustration with that, and there may have been that vocalization, but the true leader will take his folks in and actually talk the problem through, which is exactly what Mettenberger did, which is why he got the results that he got. One set of results that he didn't get, that he got in the week that he started, or at least the week that he came in, rather, was the rushing game behind him. Zach Stacy, 18 carries, 39 yards with a Trent Richardson-esque 2.2 yards per carry. And then Sherman Beatty, who bursted on the scene last week, really just kind of shriveled up this week. 6 rushes, 12 yards along of 7. So it was a fruitless night for the Express rushing. And, Mettenberger did spread the ball around, which was good. Reese Horn was the big recipient of the night. He was targeted 4 times, had 4 receptions for 63 yards. And then Pig Howard had a decent game. He had 5 targets. He caught 3 of those for 39 yards and a big 28-yarder. So, again, Mettenberger did spread the ball around. And it was good to see. So Mettenberger is definitely going to be the quarterback of the future for the Express, and if for no other reason than obviously with this win, it solidifies him as a much better option than Christian Hackenberg. So the first takeaway from this game is that Mettenberger is definitely legit, and that he is the quarterback for the Express, and for good reason. Again, the offense just looks completely different with him out there, and it's not that they're explosive and make big plays like Orlando, but the fact of the matter is that they all respond better to him, to Mettenberger, and will actually, do what they're supposed to do, is what I feel like. So you could tell it's a night and day difference between Mettenberger and Hackenberg. So that's point number one. A thing we need to take away, number one, is that Mettenberger is legit. Number two, that San Diego offense is not the same without Philip Nelson. And when he went down in the second quarter with that injury, it brought in Alex Ross. And Alex Ross did not really, he didn't play badly. I don't want to say that he played bad enough to take the team out of the game. He was only 8 for 18 with 80 yards and a touchdown, but he did throw an interception. So again, he came in and you can't really fault him too much because, again, taking backup reps, especially in the AAF, if you don't get enough reps as a backup in the NFL, you can only imagine how many reps you don't get as a backup in the AAF. So Alex Ross coming in. And in fact, it was curious, and we'll get to this actually later because we're going to be answering some questions in the later, here in overtime. But one of the questions is about this very quarterback situation. And so with Alex Ross coming in relief of Philip Nelson, as opposed to a Mike Bercovici, who was actually the guy who Philip Nelson came in to replace after some poor showings there. So, but Philip Nelson, before he got injured, 9 of 12, 110 yards and a touchdown. But again, he went down and the team just did not look the same after that. And here's the thing about him. It was a 4th and 1 play, and he actually completed it. And so him getting hurt was, it was actually a very bad situation because then Alex Ross comes in and he actually throws a touchdown, which you thought, oh, cool. This will be good because now Alex Ross comes in and sure enough, he throws a touchdown. But unfortunately, the rest of the night did not look the same for Alex Ross as it did in that first, picking up the leftovers of that first drive. So what it turned out, started out hopeful, yeah, and then it ended up being to the point where everybody was so distraught that Philip Nelson went out. And there was a lot of folks that were disappointed anyways that he went out because he was starting to look good. I mean, he looked like he was leading that offense and they were doing some good things. But when you lose your starting quarterback and your backup doesn't have as much experience as you do, that definitely leads to some confusion. And you saw that on display with Alex Ross taking over. But let's not take anything away from the fact that our third thing to take away from this is that Memphis defense is for real. I mean, a lot of the reason that Alex Ross was having problems was the fact that he was going up against a Memphis defense that was all over the field. They had 4 sacks and they had 4 turnovers. I mean, rather 5 turnovers. They actually had 4 fumbles and an interception. So this defense was all over the place. This Mike Singletary defense just taking it to the the Fleet's offense. And you could see that with Alex Ross being unsure of what he was doing, coupled with the fact that he had pressure at him all night long, it just did not do very well for him and the offense. And, a lot of the San Diego offense coming in was that rushing attack, right? With Jaquan Gardner. And then last week, Terrell Watson getting in on the action. But this week, Jaquan Gardner held under 6 yards. He had 9 carries for 6 yards and a long of 4. So the defensive line had Jaquan Gardner bottled up. Terrell Watson had 10 carries for 43 yards, so it wasn't that much better of a night for Terrell Watson. But again, the story, Jaquan Gardner, who came in, one of the leading rushers, was just completely and thoroughly bottled up by that Memphis defense. But props to the Express, man. They played an all-around good game. They hung around long enough to get the win, and good for Singletary, good for the team, good for the league, because the league is better when everybody is competitive. So for the Express to come out and to have the kind of game they did, they trailed at the half. It was 20-15 at the half. But they came back and only held San Diego to a field goal in the fourth quarter while they themselves had 11 points to come back and win. It was a great overall effort for the Express, and one that I think was, like I said, a very entertaining game to watch. And we got treated to a good start to the weekend with that game in the books. So this kind of knots things up in the West now. There's a lot of 2-2 going on, as we'll talk about here in a little bit. But now this makes things very interesting in the West. And for the East, it actually makes things a little more interesting as well, because first place is already pretty much locked up. But with the events happening this weekend too, this kind of closes up the gap and makes playoffs in the conversation for a team like Memphis. So we'll see what happens. But again, big game overall by Zach Mettenberger, just not maybe stats wise, but winning the game wise and actually bringing his team together long enough to come back and seal this victory, a much needed victory for Memphis and for the league. So, all right, again, the final score on that one was Memphis 26 and the San Diego Fleet 23. One of the close games that happened this weekend, and it started it off. So, all right, let's get to the next one. 3 things we need to know about the next game. So while the game that got flexed into prime time was not necessarily as, explosive as the first game of the week or as close, it was still a pretty good one. It was the Salt Lake Stallions hosting the Orlando Apollos, and Orlando stays undefeated as they take down the Stallions 22-11 in a game that was there weather at that game? But I don't know. I couldn't tell. I couldn't hear any of the announcers telling me that there was weather at that game. But yeah, if you didn't get a chance to watch it, there was snow. There was a lot of snow on the field, at least to open up the game. And so that was one of the major storylines of the entire, game. And they were trying to figure out whether or not Orlando was going to be able to go down into the snow and come away with the win. And they did. And it was not necessarily as easy as a lot of folks thought it was going to be. And in fact, I said that it wasn't going to be as easy or or it was going to be closer than most people were giving the Stallions credit for. And it actually ended up being closer. Going into the half, it was only 6-3. It was a game of field goals up there in the winter weather. And it wasn't until after halftime where I think the blizzard, as it were, had slowed down, and they actually had Zamboni going up against the going across the field here and there. So they cleared out 2 strips of it. Was, I mean, if you're gonna have a Zamboni go out, you might as well make a couple more passes. But they did their best. They made 2 passes, one down right through the middle of the field, and then one crazy one kind of off to, if you're on the quarterback side, to the left. So there was 2 strips taken out of that. So do with that what you may. I don't know. But it seemed to help footing a little bit in the second half, and then we were able to see a little bit more scoring in that second half as both teams traded touchdowns, and then it was Orlando getting the last one of the night, so to win the game. And here's the thing. With this one, here's what you need to know, is that it doesn't matter what kind of weather you throw at him, Garrett Gilbert is still good. He still turned in a 244-yard passing performance in the snow. Only 1 touchdown tonight, but I mean, he was 22 of 32, so he definitely got the job done. And here's the thing about Garrett Gilbert right now, is that he looks to be the most complete quarterback in the league right now. If you were to do a who's going to the NFL right now, which actually I think we've got that question coming up later, but I'll spoil part of that, is that Garrett Gilbert is actually the most complete quarterback right now. And if I were to say, if there was anybody that there was going to be plucked out right now, if the NFL started now and they said we need one person from a team, I think that would be Garrett Gilbert, because he definitely is the most complete looking quarterback. And he's still, he got rattled in this game. Salt Lake's defense, and we'll talk about that in a second, is good. And he got rattled in this game quite a bit, especially in that first half. So for him to settle down and to whatever he did in the locker room to calm down, definitely worked, because he came back out and he looked right, and he took his team down the field for a couple of important touchdowns. And that's what you want out of a quarterback. I mean, you want somebody that's going to get punched in the mouth, but that's going to, do what needs to be done to get his team on the scoreboard and ultimately in the win column. And that's exactly what he did. And his team is not undefeated for no reason. It's definitely a lot to do with his leadership, and it has a lot to do with the fact that he manages to I don't want to say game manager because, that's not what he is. He actually can do some electric things. Now, granted, they weren't taking a lot of shots downfield in this game because of the fact that the snow was hindering it. So the sun and gun, and I even tweeted that it's hard to have a sun and gun offense when there's no sun. So it definitely didn't look like something that was going to be on display a lot in this game. But he got a lot of help too. He got help from his rushing game. And Davion Smith was the running back du jour this week, as he actually got 12 carries for 51 yards. Akeem Hunt, looking like Akeem Hunt of old. He burst through with a nice touchdown run or in that second half. And what a great game that was for him. He actually needed some sort of a game like that. He had 8 carries for 35 yards, and of course that touchdown. D'Ernest Johnson, who had been the go-to guy up until then, 8 carries, 31 yards. So again, this was Davion Smith's show. And this actually goes to what I think right now, if you look at it, the trend is for a lot of these teams, and I think we've talked about this before, is the 3-headed running back monster is what's going on right now. And you see it here, especially in Orlando, where they have Akeem Hunt now, who, if he can continue to get in the mix like this, is definitely going to be someone that defenses are going to have to scheme for as well, because with D'Ernest Johnson already establishing his dominance, and then now Davion Smith again stepping up with it, if you have 3 actual legit running backs to look out for, it's definitely going to make it a lot harder for offenses to scheme. So, again, with Garrett Gilbert in that rushing game, Garrett Gilbert definitely looked good. And then the second thing is that, Salt Lake's defense didn't look bad. And we knew going in that the defense was a lot better than the record showed. And with Carter Schultz, so happy to have interviewed him in this last episode that we did, but man, that guy is all over the place. He had two solo tackles, but he had 4 quarterback hits, and that was exactly what he said he was going to try to do. And if you looked at it, it felt like every time, Garrett Gilbert dropped back to pass, Carter Schultz was somewhere in the vicinity, and when he let go, you saw Carter Schultz either laying on top of Gilbert or just like running by Gilbert because he didn't want to blow him up. But 4 quarterback hits definitely led the team in quarterback hits. So Carter Schultz, and he's seconds away from sacks at some points, but that just shows how good Garrett Gilbert is to be able to escape those, because Carter did not get home on those. So definitely a good Stallions defense. And again, with the way things are in the West now, this leaves the door open ever so slightly for Salt Lake, who did pick up their, lost another one, but it still leaves the door open for them. Like they picked up their last win last week, but it still gives them an opportunity to have some wiggle room here now that the West is pretty much all knotted up at the top. So all it's going to take is for a couple more losses on some of these and some Salt Lake wins, and they'll get to the playoffs. So again, a lot to play for in Salt Lake. They certainly don't need to give up yet, as does any team in this league now. We're only, we're coming up on the midway point, and there's still plenty of football left to be played, and there's still an actual opportunity for, some of these guys to, or some of these teams rather, to catch up. So, and then the third thing to take away is that, look, the Salt Lake Stallions have a great rushing attack still. Brandon Oliver, man, 17 carries for 71 yards. And then Joe Buono, who came in for Oliver after he went down, 8 rushes, 30 yards, and that touchdown. So, the rushing game for the Stallions is still good, and we'll keep an eye on Brandon Oliver and see what he can do. But then you had Terrell Newby come in on 2 carries. He ripped off 2 good carries for 15 yards, 7.5 yards per carry. So there were a couple of good carries for him, but definitely not a rushing attack to sleep on. And then Josh Woodrum did pretty well for himself too. I mean, it wasn't like he lit it up, and no quarterback other than Garrett Gilbert really lit it up this week. Everybody was just a serviceable type of quarterback, and Josh Woodrum, 16 of 22, 161 yards, got a 2-point conversion, but he did not throw a touchdown pass. So, for the most part, here's the thing with Salt Lake, they just need to get their receiving core going. And they actually didn't have as much success in their receiving core as I kind of hoped they would this week. But there were some folks that stepped up a little bit, and Adonis Jennings was one of them that came up this week. He had 2 receptions for 43 yards. Brian Timms caught 4 of his 5 receptions for 32 yards. And then Kenny Bell had three receptions on 5 targets for 25 yards. So, and DeMornier Pearsonell, who we thought was going to be have a lot more action in this, had 2 targets. He caught those for 24 yards. So again, not a whole lot of receiving stats and not a whole lot of air yards. I would say blame it on the weather, but you can't really blame it on the weather because, it was Garrett Gilbert playing in the same weather, and he got almost 250 yards of total passing offense. So you just gotta, I think you just gotta make sure those receivers play better is really all there is to it, because there's still a lot of drops going on right now. And I know Salt Lake suffered a few as well. So, you caught a couple more of those, maybe Woodrum would have had a better day. But all in all, it is the fact that Orlando is now still the only undefeated team in the league. They wouldn't know that until later on that weekend, but at least they went into the night knowing that they still were the only undefeated team, or they were one of 2 undefeated teams, and they were waiting for their fate to know if they were going to be the only one at the end of the weekend. And they are. So Orlando is undefeated, and Salt Lake drops to 1-3. So again, still a lot of football to be played, but there was still a lot of football to be played that weekend. So let's get to the next game. And then there was one. There is now only one undefeated team in the AAF, and that is because the Birmingham Iron could not pull it out against the San Antonio Commanders on the first game of Sunday morning. San Antonio Commanders. They need to do something about this. I don't know. Maybe we'll just call them the SD Fleet. But the San Antonio Commanders with a 1-point win over the Birmingham Iron. And what a game that was. One of the more back and forth games of the entire weekend, really. But this all came down to the following 3 things. 1, Luis Perez can still no longer, or he still can't throw touchdown passes. And I'm sorry, but if you're going to win in this league, you need a quarterback to throw touchdown passes. It's great if you're efficient. It's great if you can move the ball down the field, but you have to be able to rely on yourself rather than your stable of running backs to get it into the end zone week after week after week. And Luis Perez is not doing it. Now listen, I said, and I asked in the halftime show for the when we were doing the halftime show Sunday night, is this time for a change in Birmingham? I know it's crazy for a 3-1 team to think that it's time for a quarterback change, but it just very well could be, because right now Luis Perez is proving that other people are getting the job done. Other people are finding a way to get wins and I know that touchdown passes are not the end all be all, but he's not even throwing for that many yards either. Granted, he did throw for 202 yards this evening, but he was 19 of 39 with 2 interceptions, right? You can't keep making those mistakes and expect to keep winning. And in fact, this week proved that if you're mediocre, a better team is going to come up and get you. And so far, they didn't have that. And now they actually did come against a good San Antonio Commanders team that took them. So for Luis Perez to look as inefficient, he looked great in week 1. Didn't throw a touchdown pass, still looked great. Week 2 looked okay, still didn't throw a touchdown pass. Same thing with when it seems like each week he's not looking as good as he did in week 1. And this week, again, it caught up to him. So there was not a lot of good things to say about Luis Perez's performance. And like I said, it might be time for a change in Birmingham. It might be time for somebody to step up. Luis Perez has been the only guy out there so far. I don't even, I don't know if they have a backup quarterback. They obviously do, but there's Luis Perez's show, and he's been the guy that's taken the snaps from the beginning. And right now, I think you might want to roll with him one more time to see if he gets any better. I know it sounds crazy, like I said, for a 3-1 team, but if you're going to continue to roll yourself out there like that and leave yourself suspect, you could be in for some long games in the coming weeks here and might not win any of them. It just, once teams figure teams out, then you're running into the problem of them scheming against you. And if you know that Luis Perez can't throw a touchdown pass, then you're just going to load the box and continue to get guys like Trent Richardson bottled up, and which he actually was this week. Granted, he got his short yardage touchdown, but he had 8 carries for 15 yards with a very him-like 1.9 yards per carry and a long of 6. So, Trent Richardson, who had been multiple touchdown gold for the last few weeks, was only held to a touchdown on 15 yards. So they did a good job of bottling up. But who they did not is our number 2. This rushing game got a spark of life from Brandon Ross. Brandon Ross, 9 carries, 64 yards, 16 was his long, but he looked good bouncing it out to the outside. And I said that he is everything that you want Trent Richardson to be. And I feel as if now Brandon Ross is giving this iron rushing game the opportunity to be good, like they wanted Trent Richardson to be. And so for Ross to come on the scene and do what he did, this gives the iron a little bit more, I think, flexibility, because he started to outtouch Richardson, especially in that second half. Brandon only got 9 carries. Trent got 8. But again, with Brandon doing what he did with those 9 touches versus what Trent did with his 8 touches, you could very well see Brandon Ross jumping in a lot more than Trent Richardson in the coming weeks. And then, he'll probably outtouch him by week 7. I think he'll be the lead back, and Trent Richardson will get shuffled back to second string because, again, we've seen that, yes, within the 5-yard line, give him the ball, right? When he's close to the goal line, give the hammer the ball. But you need to soften it up, and Brandon Ross has got the speed. He's got the agility. He had 7.1 yards per carry, so he definitely knows what to do with the ball after it gets into his hands, which is what they want from Trent Richardson, but they're not getting from Trent Richardson right now. So, but somebody else on the other side of the ball, since the point 2 is going to be rushing in general, really, and we were treated to a great rushing game from Kenneth Farrow. He had 30 carries, man. They put the rock in his hand 30 times. That is almost unheard of, even in the NFL, to give him 30 carries. But what he did with it was spectacular. He had 142 yards, and he ripped off a 26-yarder as his long. So, Kenneth Farrow just having a great day, the best day for a running back in the AAF. Obviously, the most rushing yards in a single game. So 142 yards on 30 carries. It's 4.7 yards per carry, but boy, he did not put the offense in a situation where he was going to cost them anything, except for maybe just a simple fact that he was able to carry the ball that much. He could have broken down over the course of the game, but thankfully he did not. Trey Williams was the one who actually got in the end zone. For all that Kenneth Farrow did for his 142 yards, he didn't find the end zone because that was Trey Williams. As Kenneth Farrow got them down there close enough, and then Trey got them in the end zone. Trey had 4 carries for 20 yards, and we remember that Trey came in as the great change of pace back last week, and we thought that he was going to get a lot more work this week, but obviously Kenneth Farrow did not want to come off the field, and he did not. And so with obviously the Commanders doing a great job on the rushing attack, their receiving game kind of suffered, right? The leading receiver was Greg Ward, and he had 24 yards, and DeMarcus Ayers had 21 on 2 catches. So Woodside did not have to do a heck of a lot of throwing in this game. And he actually only had 106 passing yards on 25 attempts with 11 completions. So, I mean, it was all Kenneth Farrow in this game, and that was point number 3, was that, Kenneth Farrow was just a rock solid guy. And if you had him in fantasy, you probably won yourself a tournament or 2 or 3. But of note, right, this Birmingham defense is still just, I mean, you got to hand it to this Birmingham defense. They fought so hard and for so long that it was, it was apparent on the last scoring drive of San Antonio where they put up the only 3 points that they put up in the fourth quarter. But boy, that Birmingham defense. So Birmingham had just lost the ball. Obviously, Perez had fumbled the ball and San Antonio got it. And they had it, man. It was so nuts, this sequence of events, right? They got it down to the 1 yard line on a couple of plays. So they had it at the 1 yard line. Kenneth Farrow could not break through. Second down, Kenneth Farrow again could not break through. He actually lost a yard on that play. 3rd and 2 now, 3rd and goal from the 2, incomplete pass. And then Birmingham had held tight for the 3rd down, and they thought, wow, we're going to force a field goal opportunity. But no, hold on. There was a pass interference call in the end zone, which put the ball back up at the 1 yard line. There's a lot of folks that question that pass interference call on whether or not it was legit, but it happened anyways, and it gave San Antonio another crack at the end zone. And so then now it was time for the Iron Curtain to step through one more time, or to step up one more time, actually. 1st and 1, Kenneth Farrow could not get it done again to the right. 2nd and 1, could not get it done again to the right. 3rd and 1, they handed to Kenneth Farrow. He still could not get in and loses it a yard on that one too. So the exact same sequence of events for 2 straight drives. It was 6 plays inside the 1 or inside the 2 even. Could not get it done. San Antonio kicks the field goal to really just put the game, I don't want to say out of reach, because obviously it wasn't out of reach, but the fact that they kicked that field goal instead of gave the touchdown, that was Birmingham. That was their defense just completely manning up right there and just doing and keeping the Stallions in the game. Again, at that point, it was only 9-3. So it was at that point, it was 12-3, and still not out of the realm of possibility for them to come back. So, I mean, you got to hand it to that Birmingham defense. They did all they could to keep their team in the game. But when it comes down to it, man, you got to be able to put it in the end zone. And you got to be able to have a quarterback to do it. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is there. I'm definitely not a head coach, but I would think that at this point you start looking at options of quarterbacks and seeing what you can do to shake up this offense just to get some sort of jump start, because you can't win with 11 points. All the teams that scored 11 points this week prove that to you. You can't win with 11 points in this league. You need more. What a great week it was to be a winless team in week 4, as we saw the Atlanta Legends come away with their first win of the season over the Arizona Hotshots, who was just surprised by a winless team this week, much like the Express did to the Fleet to start out the weekend. So we bookend the weekend with winless teams getting their first win. And for the Legends, they definitely got the monkey off their back. They are now 1-3, and they beat the Hotshots 14-11, which is that theme of the week, 11. And number 11 for the Atlanta Legends was the hero of the day, Aaron Murray, who came in 20 of 33 for 254 yards. He did not throw a touchdown pass, but he definitely did look a lot better than Matt Sims. And it took a little bit for Murray to warm up, but in that second half, he definitely put his skills on display and looked a lot better than Matt Sims had ever looked. We did get to see our first safety in this game, so that was pretty exciting. Rashard Ross. Don't know what he was thinking. Arizona was backed up deep inside their own territory, and from I think it was about the 1 yard line, where Rashard Ross took a kind of a backfield sweep-ish play, right? A screen in the backfield, and he turned it upfield, and then decided he had more room if he went around the back, and he tried to get it out of the end zone, and he couldn't do it. So Rashard Ross with the safety. It was sad. I mean, we obviously didn't need to see that, and Rashard Ross probably going to watch that film and think to himself, well, that's not something I want to do. But here's point number one that we need to take away from this game is that Aaron Murray is definitely going to be this Atlanta Legends quarterback going through. And again, even though he didn't throw a touchdown pass, the simple fact of the matter is that much like Mettenberger in Memphis, Murray is able to lead this team and to actually win with them in a way that Matt Sims was not able to do. And for here's the thing, right? Matt Sims started this game and we just left ourselves scratching our heads wondering why Matt Sims even took the field in the first place in that first part of the game. But the ball never lies, I guess, right? And so Matt Sims ends up getting hurt on the first drive of the game for Atlanta. And then in comes Matt Sims and the rest is history now. So again, it's a matter of leadership and really, again, Matt Sims just didn't have it. And we came in flat. He had a quick short pass to Jones, right? It was actually a good pass. And he looked like he might've been moving the ball down a little bit, but then he ended up getting hurt. So, I don't know. We won't know whether or not he was going to be good in this game, but I don't know. To me, it just feels like with Aaron Murray, there's a different electricity. There's some different feel to this offense. And so Atlanta was able to grit it out and to win this ball game. And it was a good game. Again, this was a game where a lot of folks were counting out these Legends before it even started. And I'm sure myself included, I didn't really give the Legends a whole heck of a lot of shot, especially when I found out that Matt Sims was going to be the starting quarterback for this game. But Atlanta, they did it. They won in gritty fashion. And they ended up winning, even though Arizona was on its way to come back. So again, they still managed to win the game. Although the hero of this game is Young Ho Koo, which is actually, listen, I spent a year in Korea, so it's Koo Ho Young. Okay, or Koo Young Ho is what it is, because you're supposed to pronounce the last name first in Korean. So if you ever hear me say it again, I'm going to say Koo Yo Hung or Koo Young Ho, because that's really how it's supposed to be. But he is the kicker and the guy that is the I guess MVP of this game, if ever there was one. 2 ice cold kicks. And they were the difference in this game, really, as it all turned out. So the Legends definitely put together a good game in this instance. But the second point is that Jarrell Presley is just a stud. I mean, listen, when you watch this guy run, and I get so excited that I'm brushing into the mic, but Jarrell Presley can run, man. This guy has got some definite moves. He had 110 yards on the night, not Kenneth Farrow numbers, but definitely good numbers. Almost an 8-yard per carry average, but he can move, man. This guy definitely is magic with the ball in his hand. We didn't see the 3-headed monster like we thought we would with Justin Stockton and Tim Cook, but they didn't need to, because Jarrell Presley, 14 carries, 110 yards. He definitely did it right. So Jarrell Presley is one to watch out for. But then again, this Atlanta Legends rushing, they got some good folks too. Brandon Ratcliffe coming on and looking good. And then Bernard Robinson actually coming back from the dead. 9 carries, 43 yards and a touchdown for him. Brandon Radcliffe had 12 carries for 48 yards. So he actually looked good too. And then Folston, I don't know where this guy came from. 5 carries for 21 yards. A respectable 4.2 yards per carry, already averaging more yards per carry than Trent Richardson. But, again, this was a team that put it together and did it right. And that's the third point of this whole thing, is that this Atlanta Legends team was a complete team. So they got production from just about everywhere. And defensively, they were managing to hold, Arizona, and John Wolford, who actually is a good quarterback in his own right? He was one of the hottest quarterbacks in the league to start out with. They held him to 185 yards and a touchdown. So it wasn't as if he lit him up either. So this defense, definitely held their own and managed to come away with the win. But the receiving area too for the Legends. I mean, Folston was the one that actually led all receivers with 66 yards on 5 receptions. But Malachi Jones had 2 catches for 50 yards, and he had a pretty good 33-yarder. Bug Howard had 1 catch for 37 yards. So these guys, they were able to get down the field. James Quick, the same thing. He had 3 catches for 37 yards. He had a 20-yard long one. So, a lot of these guys were catching long balls. Folston had a 36-yarder. Malachi Jones with a 33. Howard with that 37-yarder. Irvin Phillips had a 21-yarder. So, again, these guys were getting down the field, and Aaron Murray was able to find them. So, definitely a good night overall for Atlanta, and they get the monkey off their back just like Memphis did, and walked away with a win, a much needed win again. And I said that before, and I mean that, because this league obviously is only going to do well if everybody in it is competitive. And so far we're starting to see that, especially as it comes down to the last few games of this season. We're halfway through now. We're about to be halfway through after this week, and we're going to see some of these matchups, man, coming down to the wire. And like I said, we were treated to 4 very entertaining games this week. And for my money, that's all I really want. I want competitive games that actually have a fair amount of big plays. And we saw some big plays this weekend. We saw the first safety of the week, and we continue to see great running back performances like we did with Kenneth Farrow and Jarrell Presley. So there's a lot to be happy for, and a lot to be happy to walk away with from week 4. Again, some great competitive games. I wish that we could have seen a few more people in the stands, but we'll talk about that during our questions and answer period. But even still, like I said, a lot of great stuff in week 4. We are no longer a league or an alliance of winless teams. At least everybody has 1 win now in the alliance, so we can all be happy about that. So yeah. All right. Let us get to our overtime. All right, so this week I asked you to use the hashtag AskAllianceFBPod to give me your questions so I could answer them here live on the show. And I'm going to take this first question from JB, co-host of the Broken Plane On podcast, on Twitter at Mac Beerchill. Mac Beerchill. JB, who's a good friend of the show now, he asks, was there an explanation on why, Alex Ross? I was trying to read the Twitter handle, but yeah, Alex Ross got the nod after Philip Nelson went down. Will Burko be the backup next week or the emergency QB? There was no official explanation. I did not get one, nor could I really find one. I'm only assuming that they saw enough of Burko that they gave Alex Ross the nod just to see what he could do, or maybe Burko wasn't ready. I mean, maybe he was hurt. I don't know that they'll give Burko the opportunity next week. They should, to be honest with you. I don't know that we've seen enough out of Ross to say that he's the starter, especially with Burko being the starter on week 1. Obviously, we knew he couldn't get it done, so Philip Nelson, when he came in, did great things. So I don't know. I mean, again, we know that Philip Nelson will probably be out for a little while, but who that is, I don't know. Maybe Johnny Manziel comes in, maybe, and takes the starting role. I hope not, but whatever. I think Alex Ross is going to get the nod again. So thank you for the question there. But Burko, I don't know. To me, I didn't see it. I didn't see that spark either. And I didn't see it out of Alex Ross so much either. But that game was competitive. So maybe they'll leave Alex Ross in to see if he can get some seasoning. So yeah. David Comer, who's tweeting at David Comer _Fox2, said, Rod, are you concerned about attendance? How much of it is due to low scoring? Almost never see 2-point conversions, leaving scores looking like gross field goal duels. And how much is due to weather? Maybe push back the season by 2 weeks. Those are a couple of very interesting points too at the end of that. But I'm not concerned about attendance, and maybe, of course, it's not my job to be concerned about attendance, right? I mean, that's what the folks that are in charge of the league, they should be, I guess, concerned about the turnstiles, but I'm not really concerned about turnstiles. What I am concerned about is the perception that the empty seats are leaving with the fans. Because here's the thing, a lot of these stadiums, right, seat 30, 40,000 people. And even if you have 5 or 6,000, which is to me a good turnout for a sporting event. It's still going to look empty, and then couple that with the way they still sell seats, right? If you're going to do this, if you're going to sell seats, you should close off sections, and make the sections that you sell look packed. So condense the sections that you can actually watch the game in. And I know that kind of defeats the purpose of being able to purchase your seat and sit wherever you want. But, again, if you're that concerned about aesthetics and you really think that people seeing, sparse crowds and people sitting in sparse areas is going to affect your product, then you need to make it look better than it does and seat them closer together and maybe in one section to make it look better than it actually is. And maybe that would give a perception of better, because then you cut down on the camera angles and again, they're already, if you don't notice already, and I'm sure you do because you work in television, David, and the fact that the camera angles in an NFL, they go willy-nilly and you can see all over the stadium and you can go over, the field actual cameras, do dip up into the stands because there's crowds there. If you watch an AAF game, the cameras don't stray too far from the action and you don't get to see the crowds very often, and they don't have that big wide sweeping. Even the sky cam, when it looks down, it's looking down. It's not looking across the crowd. So they're doing their best to not necessarily show the crowd, which to me says, that they're trying to mitigate the perception that nobody's in the stands. Because again, I don't know. I mean, it could be a little bit of the weather too. Maybe pushing the season back 2 weeks helps a little bit. But I think they tried to do it this way this season, obviously, to jump on the fact that the Super Bowl was over right away. Maybe if they do push back 2 weeks this next coming season, it will definitely help attendance because of the weather being the way it is. But, people go out in Green Bay in freezing cold weather. People go out in all of these cold Buffalo in freezing cold weather. So, I don't know. It's just a matter of this league has got to get a little more popular, and I'm not too concerned about that because they're not basing their revenue off of the turnstiles and the people walking through it. And then you wanted a quick follow-up. If it frustrates me as a fan that non-NFs, I get that, and I understand because I'm from. Man, I keep hitting my microphone today. I'm from Northern California, and the closest team to us is the San Diego team. I would love to see a team in Sacramento. I'd love to be able to be close enough to watch an AAF game live without having to take a 6-hour trip down to San Diego or even a couple-hour flight down to San Diego. So as far as expansion rumors go, is the next part of that question. Have you heard any expansion rumors? There's tons of rumors flying around. I have not heard any official from league official rumors about expansion. All I'm seeing is folks on, Reddit or on Twitter or wherever talking about their, or podcasts talking about their expansion theories and where they're going to go. But I haven't seen anything official. Remember that expansion for this team is a cost. And in fact, that's one of the questions that I'm going to answer here in a second. But expansion is a cost. And to them, they don't want to incur any more costs right now. They want to keep it close to the vest. Obviously, maybe with this infusion of $250 million, that does open up a chance for expansion. But I think right now they just want to keep the costs low enough to where they can continue to provide the quality of football that they're providing right now. So, thank you again so much for your question, David. I'm so glad that you asked. Sam Simpkins, tweeting at Sam Simpkins1, asks, which NFL player on your team which NFL player on your team would you have go to the AAF for more development, and who would you call up for your team from the AAF? Well, first of all, I don't have a team in the AAF, so I wouldn't know. But my team is the Niners, and who I would send down, that's a really good question, because I don't know that I'd really send anybody down to the AAF for more development. Because here's why I'm going to answer this question this way. Okay, I don't see this team being viable as a minor league team. Right, I don't see this as one of those opportunities where they're going to use it as a farm league, and I just don't think that it actually should be treated that way. This is a professional league that is paying players professionally to play. I don't think that we need to start thinking of this as we need to send these guys up and down like an AHL or an NBA G League where they start to do that, because to me that'll just ruin the integrity of this league altogether, as if we turn it into a minor league and not a professional league where, okay, maybe at the end of a season, they get a couple of shots at the NFL, much like the CFL does, right? I mean, they play out their season, and then if they get a shot at the NFL, that's great. If they don't, then they continue to play in the CFL. No harm, no foul, because it's a professional standalone league. This isn't a farm league. It's not a feeder league. It's not a developmental league. It's a companion league, right? It goes alongside of it's spring football. So I don't want to see any of my players go up and down to the AAF, because I just don't think that that's the way this needs to be treated. Samuel Lynn Smith tweeting at mstay68 says, do the teams have individual owners like the NFL teams? I've heard no mention of them. This is a great question, Samuel, and I'll tell you why, because I just sort of alluded to it back in my last answer. This is a league where all the teams are owned by the AAF. They are owned by the Alliance. They are owned by a single entity. So no, there's no single team owners, which is why it doesn't really matter about attendance, and it doesn't really matter about a lot of these things that the NFL or some of these other leagues have to deal with, because they are owned by one person. The owners are not trying to make more money off of this. The league is trying to just do what it can to survive right now in one owner. And so I think, to me, that opens up a lot more avenues, which is why expansion is not quite as feasible as a lot of people say, because every team is an expense. And they don't want to do that right off the bat, especially when, they're just trying to keep what they have. So yeah, there are no individual owners. There's just one big owner, and that's the AAF. So yeah, definitely a good thing for the league. And then he also asks, do we have any plans of a legit draft? I know allocation was the way they were going this season, but maybe should this thing get into year 2 or 3, we might start seeing a legit draft. But I know the reason that they did the allocation was for player recognition and for folks to get behind it. So, it definitely was a good way to get into it. And so I think eventually you could end up seeing a legit draft, but I think we're a few years away from that. So yeah, but that's definitely a good question. And then the last question comes from at Randy Rogers 7. So Randy Rogers asked, what do you think of the race in the West? It's crazy, isn't it? The West is such a tight race right now, with everybody knotted up at 2-2 except for the Stallions. So this is going to be an interesting finish. The second half of the season is going to go a long way in showing what our champion of the West is going to be like. And listen, don't sleep on the East either, because the East is still just as close. I know that Orlando's running away with it right now, but there's still a second team that's got to come out of that East, right? And if it's not Birmingham, then who's it going to be? So yeah, I mean, with the West being the way it is, all knotted up, it definitely doesn't leave a lot of room for error. And I think that ultimately, the team that's going to come out of the West is going to be the team that has the better overall team performance. And I know that sounds like a cop-out thing to say, but so far we've seen that is how you win games, right? No quarterback has put the team on their back other than Garrett Gilbert. And I always say that with an asterisk by it, but with Garrett Gilbert doing what he's doing, but no other team has really put the quarterback put their team on their back and won. It's always been a complete effort. You've seen the defense step up. You've seen the running back step up. You've seen the receivers make big plays. So, this is going to be a situation where whatever team wins out of the West is going to be that complete package. So and this is going to all depend too on if Philip Nelson is out for an extended period of time, because maybe the Fleet drop out if they have to rely on Alex Ross or Mike Bercovici, heaven forbid. It's just a matter of who's going to rise up to the occasion. So yeah, this is going to be crazy. I mean, the second half of the season, strap in, right? We are in for a lot of fun, and I can't wait. So, hey, thanks everybody for the questions. I'm so glad we got a chance to answer some more. I hope you enjoyed your answers, and I would encourage you to continue using the hashtag AskAllianceFBPod with your questions, and I will certainly, I'll use Mondays, I think, to answer these questions. This is a good episode to do that. So, all right, that'll do it. We are going to close up shop and get ready for our Friday episode and get ready for some football on the weekend. So let's get to it. And that'll do it. That'll put to bed another episode of the Alliance Football Podcast. Episode 15 is now complete. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for asking those questions. I gotta tell you, I love these mailbag episodes. Keep them coming. Use the hashtag AskAllianceFBPod, and I will answer your questions on the show on the Monday episodes. I think we'll keep it at that. That's a fun way to do it. So what a great week to look back on, right? So many good things to take away and so many good football games to recap. I was so pleasantly surprised to watch some good football. Not that I didn't think it was going to happen, but come on, it's good football, and I liked it. So, all right, that'll do it for this episode. We are coming back again on Friday for our game recap, our game previews. We already did the game recaps, game previews, a couple of great interviews. I've got some good guests lined up this week, so I so hope you are ready for Friday's episode, because I know I am, and I'm even more ready for football this weekend. So can we get to it, please? There's a saying in the CFL that, is it June yet? I think I'm going to incorporate it into this show now, because I'm ready to. Is it Saturday yet? That's going to be our new tag. Ready? Is it Saturday yet?